Go live now.
All right, then we're going to call to order the Thursday, November 5th meeting of the SACOG Transportation Committee. And so, Jessica, if you wouldn't mind, please giving us the introduction and then calling the roll.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. For those tuning in, this meeting is being recorded and will be made available on SACOG's YouTube channel. All presentations provided at this meeting can be found on SACOG's website. For our members of the public who wish to make a comment, you can notify us by pressing *9 if participating telephonically, or by selecting raise hand if participating by computer. To our committee members, we ask that you mute yourselves when not speaking to eliminate any background noise. And when you are ready to speak, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 if phoning in to alert the chair. With that, I will take roll call. Director Harris? Absent. Director Joyner?
Harris is here. I was just muted, sorry.
Sorry, I see you now. Thank you. Director Joyner?
He's not able to join us today.
Okay, thank you, James. Absent. Director Peters?
Here.
Thank you. Director Samayoa?
Here.
Director Sander? Absent. Director Saylor?
Here.
Director Chenier?
Sander is here. I just managed to get a phone call at the exact same time you were calling my name.
Oh,
I had to figure out how to delete without hanging up on you. I'm here.
Thank you.
Chenier is here.
Okay, I'll let the record show. Sander and Chenier are here. Director Slowey?
Here.
Director Veerkamp?
Yes, I'm here.
Vice Chair Jennings?
I am here.
Vice Chair Soon?
Here.
Chair Cabaldon?
Here. And so a quorum is present. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Benapal.
Yes, ex officio member Benapal.
Good morning, everyone.
All right,
Thank
welcome,
you.
MRG. All right, so a quorum is present. So let's proceed to public communications. Madam Clerk, do we have any public communications this morning?
No public communications here, no. And I don't see any raised hands. So we're good.
All right, then let's proceed to the consent agenda, which is simply item 1. Is there any questions or comments or amendments or motion?
I'll move it.
Chair, would you like to do the Pledge of Allegiance first?
Yeah, that's probably good.
Oh, sorry. Yep. Let's suspend the consent agenda, but we have the motion that's been placed in, and we'll proceed to the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Jennings, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
Flag.
the United States of America and to the republic for which it
The
stands,
Republic for which it stands,
under
one
God,
nation, under
indivisible,
God,
with
indivisible,
liberty,
liberty, and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jennings. So Mr. Chenier has moved, and do we have a second on the consent agenda?
We do.
Slowly seconds. Or whoever.
I believe I got Slowey on the second.
Yeah, you can pretty much count. If you can't tell, it's usually Jeff Slowey. So let's take that one. So if there's no further discussion, if you would, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the consent agenda.
Absolutely. Director Harris?
Aye.
Thank you. Director Joyner? Absent. Director Peters? Oh, thank you. I see Director Peters' hand raised, so we'll indicate that as an aye. Director Samayoa?
Aye.
Director Sander?
Aye.
Director Saylor?
Aye.
Director Chenier?
Aye.
Director Slowey?
Aye.
Director Veerkamp?
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jennings?
Aye.
Vice Chair Soon?
Aye.
Chair Cabaldon?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right, so the consent agenda is adopted. That brings us into our set of information items. The first is item 2, the Transit in 2020 CARES Act funding. Simon Bechtel.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about our transit operators and the 2020 CARES Act funding and how they've been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So this spring, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act, was signed into law, providing $2 trillion in support of a variety of economic sectors affected by COVID-19, and this included public transit agencies. As part of the federal legislation, the Federal Transit Administration, or FTA, allocated $25 billion to recipients of formula transit funds. In our 6-county region, the CARES Act provided over $135 million to transit agencies to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. More than 6 months later, each of these agencies continues to help their communities respond to the challenges that have been brought on by the pandemic. Since COVID-19 emerged in the U.S., transit providers in the SACOG region and across the country have experienced significant year-over-year decreases in ridership, in some cases over 90% decrease in ridership, as well as decreases in revenue. And along with that, they've also had unplanned costs they've had to deal with, including personal protective equipment needs, additional and substantial amounts of cleaning, as well as other health and safety activities that are due to the pandemic. SACOG coordinated with our transit agencies, as well as our community-based transportation providers, on emergency services and programming of the Special CARES Act funding in the SACOG region. You can see on attachment A, the region's transit agencies and community-based transportation providers have many active or planned services to support vulnerable populations during the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of these services include delivering meals to seniors, as well as offering home grocery and pharmacy delivery to the vulnerable, distributing personal protective equipment or PPE to transit riders, transporting susceptible riders for essential trips. Social service transportation providers are also doing wellness checks and service referrals to find folks who may need food or medicine that they can't otherwise access. This is in addition to providing those essential trips that those folks may need as well. And some of our providers are also doing special transportation specifically for homeless individuals and families to dedicated shelter locations that's helping to reduce the spread of COVID-19 within that at-risk population. And in addition to spending their CARES Act funds on special programs, our transit operators are also using it for ongoing transit services. Many of the eligible operators will be able to offset some revenue losses due to COVID-19 using CARES Act funds through fiscal year 2021-2022, and possibly there's a few that may be able to have some remaining funds for 2022-23. There are still many challenges, though, with funding, in particular for our transit operators, again, that large drop-off in ridership. And there are also challenges for our human service and social service transportation providers who, not being recipients of certain kinds of Federal Transit Administration funding, were not eligible for CARES Act funding and are now facing serious financial challenges. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there questions from members of the committee?
If there aren't any questions, I'd like to pass you all over to Chris Doherty and Michael Rawson to continue the discussion of our collaborative interagency transit work that will be done as part of the Next Generation Transit Project.
All right, so we'll formally be moving then to item 2. If there's no discussion on item 1, then to the Next Generation Transit Strategy. Mr. Doherty.
Yes, good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Chris Doherty with the Transportation Group here at SACOG. And today in my presentation, I'm joined by Mike Rawson, who's also co-managing this project, and Autumn Bernstein, who heads up our consultant team at ARUP. As we just heard through Barbara's presentation, with declines in ridership and the current pandemic influencing ridership, the transit industry is at an inflection point. To support our regional transit agencies and ensure that our region has an effective transit system that meets the needs of our residents and helps us meet our regulatory goals, SACOG has kicked off the Next Generation Transit Study. This project, with funding support from Caltrans, will establish a vision for the region's transit systems over the next 20 years. While the team is looking at a long-term vision, we are also identifying short-term strategies that can be implemented in the next 5 years. For this work, we are partnering with the region's Thank you, I got my video back. Our region's transit agencies, our member jurisdictions, and key stakeholder groups. We are doing this through 2 stakeholder groups, a technical advisory committee and a policy advisory committee. And we expect that those 2 committees will be informing this project as we move through. We anticipate this work will be completed by late spring of next year. And to discuss the project in a little more detail and to introduce our consultant team, who will also be conducting a brief survey of the committee today, I'd like to turn it over to Autumn Bernstein, who will be handling the rest of the presentation.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. It's great to be here with you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll jump into a presentation to walk you through with a little bit more detail some of the pieces Chris just covered with regard to the study, our goals, and our approach to it, as well as to do some live polling to really get some of your feedback as we're moving into implementation of this project. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right, can everybody see that? Great, okay. So I'll just quickly introduce our team and then talk a little bit about the goals and approach of the project, talk about our 6 focus areas, tell you a bit more about our stakeholder outreach approach, and wrap up with talking about our schedule and next steps. So we are going to be doing some live polling as a way to capture some feedback and input from you all for this project, as we really, this is a very collaborative project, and having feedback from you as well as our other stakeholders is really critical. So if you would, if you've got a separate monitor, if you've got 2 monitors, if you want to use your browser and click over to menti.com and then enter this code, that will allow you to participate in the poll. Or if you only have just a laptop, you can just do it on your phone as well. You can be here in the meeting on your laptop and then use the phone to participate in the poll. Either way, it works really well on a phone or a computer. So if you have the means, I know some of you might be in a car and it's not possible, but for those of you who can, we'd love to have you participate. So a little bit about the team. ARIP is the lead consultant, and I'll say a little bit more about ARIP in a minute. Again, my name's Autumn Bernstein. I'm the project manager. I am a senior transportation planner based in ARIP's Oakland office. I've been working in transportation policy for about 15 years, a lot of that time in the nonprofit sector, where I had the opportunity to work as an advocate on several of the SACOG MTP SCS cycles. And it's been working as a consultant for about the last 5 years, where I specialize in facilitating kind of complex policy development processes that involve a lot of different stakeholders who are really trying to tackle, challenging problems. So this is the kind of project that I love, and I'm really excited to be working with you on it. The other leadership folks on the ARIP team are Will Baumgardner, who's our project director, and Tony Brazzoni, who is our technical lead. And then we have 2 subs that are joining the project. NWC Partners is a small firm that works with transportation agencies on funding and finance strategies. So they're going to be helping think about ways to help with some of the financial challenges that both Chris and Barbara were just talking about. And then Steer, which is a firm that really works at the nexus of transportation and technology. And so they're going to be focused on the user experience and innovative mobility. How do we harness some of these new technologies and tools to really to inform this study? So that's our team. Just a quick note about ARIP. If you don't know us, we are a global firm that works on all aspects of the built environment. We're based in London. We have staff all over the world, including about 600 staff here in California. We're employee owned and values driven. So we've adopted the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a key part of our core business strategy, and we're really proud that we get to work every day with our clients to align the work that we do with those values. So, the Next Generation Transit Study, the goal of this project is to articulate a vision and recommend strategies for developing a more robust public transportation and mobility network in the SACOG region. So what does that mean? Well, the way we're approaching the work, a key piece, of course, is what is that vision and what are our goals for the next generation transit system? So how do we take the vision that you all have worked hard to articulate in the MTPSCS, looking ahead to 2040, and thinking about how do we have a transit network across the region that really works to implement that vision? So what would high quality transit look and feel like in the region's urban, suburban, and rural communities? What shared goals and benchmarks can the very diverse transit operators within the SACOG region work together towards to achieve that vision? And how to address inequities among populations and geographies that have historically been excluded from having really high quality transit service that connects them to jobs and opportunities. So that's the vision that we'll be working to identify and articulate in collaboration with you and our stakeholders. And then documenting the opportunities and challenges of the current network. So we'll be reviewing and identifying the trends that are shaping the network, both internally and externally. Of course, one of those very big external trends, which needs no introduction, is COVID, and thinking about how COVID has shifted to the trajectory that the region's transit agencies were already on. And, of course, COVID presents kind of unprecedented challenges for the sustainability and viability of transit going forward, as Barbara was just talking about. It also creates an urgency to innovate, to meet these challenges. And so in a way, even though this project was envisioned and advertised before COVID, the timing of it is really quite serendipitous, and I think really does create an opportunity because there is a need for innovation if the transit network is going to survive this crisis. And so, we're very committed to making sure the work that we do here is not only focused on the long-term 2040, but is also focused on, how do we help the transit agencies recover and get back on their feet so that we can continue to serve the transit riders of the SACOG region. So then the kind of core deliverable of the project then is to develop a toolbox of promising strategies to achieve the vision and goals. And so again, both thinking about the long term, what are 4 to 6 big moves that really could define the next generation of transit? And then in the near term, what are the immediate actions to support COVID recovery and move towards that larger vision? Can we do both? Can we help the agencies recover in a way that aligns with the long-term vision and goals for the region? And of course, a key part of all of this is engaging with transit agencies, stakeholders, and the SACOG board, and using that input to shape all aspects of this work plan. So with that, I want to take a pause and actually go over to our live poll and ask you our first question, which is, what is one word or phrase that describes your vision for a successful regional transit network in the SACOG region? So again, if you want to go over to menti.com and we can put in the chat, in case you missed it, the code for logging on. And I see that some of you are already jumping right in, which is great.
Hi, Autumn. We sent the code in the chat for you.
Thank you so much. All right, so I'm seeing a few answers. Accessible, privatized, nimble, efficient. Yeah. All right, we'll leave it open for just another 15 seconds or so if you're still getting logged on. Go ahead and set a little timer here. Supports economic development, yeah. All right, there's the timer. So I will hopefully silence the timer, and we'll go ahead and move on. Oh, great. So connected, efficient, supporting economic development, highly utilized. I like that one. nimble, privatized, and accessible. Great. Thank you everyone for your participation. Let's keep moving. So our 6 focus areas, as I alluded to, are are kind of a core part of our approach to this. And I want to, as we talk about them, you'll see there's a lot of overlap between these. And so I'm really thinking about it as this is the outer ring of a Venn diagram. What are the strategies? What are the goals? And then what are the strategies that we can articulate that are really in the middle of this Venn diagram that help us, across all 6 of these different areas. So this is a way of organizing our work, but ultimately the final product, we think will be an integrated set of strategies that really meet, check all the boxes. So the first, of course, is the transit network itself. And how and where can we improve fixed route transit to really make it work as best as it can? And how and where are alternatives to fixed route transit worth exploring in places where we know fixed route transit was struggling before COVID and is struggling even more now. Interagency collaboration is our second topic. So how can stronger partnerships among the operators make the regional system perform better? So this is not governance. We're not talking about consolidation here. We're talking about how do we have the system work more like an integrated system from the user perspective so that it's easy for users to navigate across the region and feel like they are in one system, even if behind the scenes, they're crossing, operator boundaries, and moving back and forth between different parts of the system. But from their perspective, it feels seamless. So that kind of dovetails well into number 3, user experience. Again, where can we make the user experience more seamless, convenient, and ultimately competitive with driving? Because we know if we're going to increase the utilization of transit, it needs to be competitive with driving. And in the atmosphere of COVID, it also needs to feel as safe as driving. Number 4, travelers. So what are the best opportunities to attract new riders and better serve existing riders, particularly disadvantaged communities or those who've not had access to high quality transit in the past? Land use. This is very much connected to the question of the transit network itself. So which types of land uses and communities are best served by regular traditional fixed route transit? And what types of communities maybe need to look at alternatives in order to better meet their needs in an efficient and effective way? And then lastly, emerging mobility. So what are the roles of microtransit, micromobility, autonomous vehicles, all these new technologies and tools that we have? What's their role in improving the system in the Sacramento region? So our next polling question, again, you don't have to re-enter the code. You should just be able to click back over there and it should automatically pop up for you. But we want to get your sense on what the biggest opportunities are for improving transit. So among these, we've got 6 different options here. Please select up to 3. That could be faster, more frequent service. It could be more integration across operators. It could be improving the user experience through things like mobile payments, attracting new riders, rethinking how we serve rural and suburban communities, or pilots and partnerships with micromobility providers. All right. So improving the user experience through things like mobile payments and trip planning seems to be the getting a lot of votes, as well as thinking about micromobility pilots and partnerships. We'll leave this open for just a couple more seconds. We've got about 6 responses, so I think that that's capturing most of the people on the call. If there's anyone else who wants to vote, we'll let you do so. Great. So it is interesting. So attracting new riders, micromobility partnerships, rethinking those service models. And interesting to see that integrating service across operators, not the most popular strategy. And I would say that the feedback that we're hearing from you reflects some of the feedback that we've heard in our conversations with the transit operators as well. We just completed a round of interviews with the transit operators around the region, and definitely the question of micromobility pilots and partnerships. How do we think about things like the VIA shuttle that's been that SAC-RT and the city of West Sacramento have been utilizing? How do we think about potentially expanding that to other areas? Thinking about the next generation of Connect Card and how that could become an online a mobile payment app. So very similar thinking that we're hearing from the transit operators. So I'll go ahead and close the voting on this and move to the next slide. So ranking new mobility trends in order of importance. So if you want to go ahead and chime in here, how important is microtransit? You know, shuttles like VIA versus Uber and Lyft as an approach for some places, scooters and bike share, self-driving cars and self-driving transit vehicles, and car sharing services like Zipcar. I'd love your feedback on which of these you see as being really promising strategies for the region. Well, scooters and bike share, interesting. Interesting to see scooters and bike share. Microtransit, yeah. Uber and Lyft, which we now, based on the results yesterday, it seems like are going to be with us for the foreseeable future. Coming in at number 3. Give it another 15 seconds or so for anyone who's still voting. Is anyone out there still working on it? Okay, I'm going to close it in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. And so we see microtransit at the top of the list, followed very closely by Uber and Lyft and scooters and bike share, and lower priority around car sharing services and self-driving cars and transit vehicles. So very interesting. And as I say, you know, we've heard a lot about microtransit already, and interesting to hear that as well here. All right, we'll keep on moving. So the last piece I want to talk about is our stakeholder outreach. And so as I indicated, we just completed a round of interviews with the transit operators, with all the transit operators in the region, which we found to be really illuminating in terms of hearing from the staff, you know, about what they saw as the key challenges and opportunities. And as Chris alluded to, we have 2 committees that are going to be engaging with us throughout this process, a technical advisory committee, which is comprised of the transit service providers, as well as a handful of other technical experts, and then a policy advisory committee made up of business community and policy leaders. We ARIP are scoped to have 3 meetings of each of those committees through February 2021. Although we anticipate that that SACOG will continue to engage with those folks, beyond the end of our contract. And that engagement is really focused, initially on kind of articulating a set of vision and goals, and then vetting and prioritizing those strategies which seem to have the most promise. So a couple more questions to close things out. So would love to hear from you about what you think are the strengths of the transit agency or agencies that serve your jurisdiction. So this is an open-ended question, so you can, answer it however you like. We'll give about 30 seconds. So if you have, but and I'm also going to say, well, this is our last question, and then we're going to go into discussion. And so, you'll have an opportunity to answer this verbally as well. I'll put it that way. But we wanted to see if there's any kind of key themes that we can capture that may help inform that conversation. Quality service provider with optimal routes. Committed to serving customers, great. Efficient and responsive, absolutely. Attractive light rail. Ability to reform, interesting. I want to hear more about that. Innovative, great. So we've got about 6 responses. So I think we're just about done with this one. So thank you for your responses on that. I'm going to skip through this next question because I think this is a question I really want to hit on in the discussion as far as what are the biggest challenges to implementing the system. I think that's might be more interesting to hear some of those responses from you in person or in person online. So as far as next steps, and then we'll go into discussion, just so you know kind of where we are in our process, we are currently working on our analysis of opportunities and challenges. We've been gathering a lot of data from SACOG staff and also from the transit operators, particularly to try to understand how things have changed with COVID, to prepare that analysis by the end of November. And then we'll be working to articulate a set of vision goals and key performance indicators before Christmas. And also hosting our TAC and PAC kickoff meetings also before the holidays. So those are the next steps for us. And with that, I want to open it up for discussion. And I will stop sharing my screen now so we can all look at each other. And I would say, of course, we want to hear from you, any kind of questions that you have. Chris and I are here to answer.
So Autumn, let's return. We're actually in a formal committee. Let's return to that. We also have one item of public comment on this as well. So why don't we turn to that? Madam Clerk, if you could open up public comment on this item.
Yes, Chair Cabaldon, I've received one email comment. No hands raised at the moment, so I'll go ahead and read that comment. It's from Dan Allison, a member of the public. He says, the documents provided do not detail when and how the NGTS Policy Advisory Committee will be constituted. Either SAC-TRU, aka Transit Writers Union, and or Sacramento Transit Advocates and Writers, aka STAR, must have a seat on the committee. That concludes his comment.
All right. Thanks, Jessica. All right, and so we've completed the 15-minute allocation we had for the items. So I want, Autumn, as we proceed to discussion, this will not be the committee's only opportunity to engage in this as well. So I want to first see if we can open it up to questions about the strategy and the process and going forward first, and see if we have time to delve into the content. But I do know we have a couple of committee members also that cannot stay for too much longer, and we have several other agenda items as well. So first, are there questions for Chris or for Autumn about the strategy and the development process itself? That is the subject of our information item.
I have kind of a generic comment, Christopher.
Yeah, Mr. Sanders.
Having been through, I would say, innumerable of these processes at this point, past board chair at RT, and I was, on committees for RT back in the 90s. It's kind of hard for me to get really excited or motivated about one more, honestly. So I'm kind of curious about, why we think this one will result in anything different in our local market. But I do think there is enormous structural change coming, and we've seen it for over a decade evolving in this entire industry. And we've seen some great local innovation as well. I'm just wondering, how are we going to actually come to something in this process that would be sort of worthwhile towards that change and acknowledging that enormous transition we're in.
Chris, if you want to open up, I might add something, but please, if you have a couple comments.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you for the comment and the question. And we took that eye coming into this process as well. There's been a lot of planning work, but not quite to this vision. I think that and to the length of vision that we've done at the regional level yet. So I think what we're really looking at, and we think where this is going to be really beneficial, is those interim 0 to 5 year strategies that will point us towards that kind of long-term vision, but also really the analysis around taking it from the consumer standpoint, from the rider standpoint, to make it as easy as possible to get on transit, to use transit, to make those barriers that have kind of plagued our region for a long time kind of start to disappear, to make more frictionless travel, is I think where we're going to focus a lot. I think that'd be really beneficial moving forward.
I might just add, Director Sander, that there's so as you saw in the prior item, the attachment, there's some with great challenge comes some unique kind of initiative. And so one thing we're impressed by is the amount of kind of reconsidering services that many of our local transit providers and human service providers are offering in terms of they're redefining basically what transit is in our region. And some of that innovation, though, can only really happen if the region takes kind of a little bit more of a role to try to help coordinate or kind of create economies of scale or efficiencies. And while we're also seeing that great initiative in our region, we're seeing, of course, the financial pressures that will lead to either innovation or just they won't be able to operate at all. So we really do hope that some of the near-term strategies can help us realize how to harness that innovation and help them create sustainable business models, because there, as you were saying, there's just such great structural reform that's going to happen. We know that there's going to be change. We just think that we could have a hand as a SACOG board with funding and policy opportunities to help our local initiatives take flight and really be successful. We've also seen longer term, some of our bigger regions, some of the peer regions we've looked at, whether it's Indianapolis or Atlanta, look at ways to reconsider what is governance across multiple transit operators. And there's some really great examples, especially out of Atlanta, where they have found a way to hold on to a dozen or so operators, but find ways to improve user experience by co-branding, co-marketing, even using bus wraps so that the user perceives it as one integrated system, and has led to significant changes in ridership. So I think that, I understand your frustration as long as others. Transit's long had some challenges trying to implement long-term strategies, because it's often just about getting those buses on the street the next day. But we are hopeful that the time is ripe right now for both short-term tactical strategies to recover from the pandemic, as well as long-term vision. And we think that regions more than ever have a place in helping transit be successful and helping a region thrive and offer high quality of life.
Dr. Saylor.
Chairman. Yeah, thank you very much, Christopher. It's good to see you all this morning. So folks, one of the things that I want to suggest is that we take a look at all the input that we've received over the last couple of years through the unmet transit needs process. Now, a lot of those, when we first hear them, sometimes they seem like very specific, particularistic kinds of comments. But if we were to take a lens of how do those varying disparate comments lace together, is there some themes and major trends of thinking that we can discern from those unmet transit needs across the system, across the region? I think we might get some interesting ideas. Second point is that when I think of next generation transit, I'm drawn to a couple of things, and one of them is that a lot of the comments we get are from the folks who are already using transit, who want the experience to be enhanced, and that's all good. But I think we want to have transit embedded in daily mobility decisions of a much larger population, and so that I think that for me means both. It means some infrastructure investment in addition to rolling stock and better trip planning and ways of paying and all that. So to me, I'd be interested in having this process help to identify infrastructure investments in things like bus rapid transit or what other pieces. And of course, the shuttles and the micro transit are good feeders, but for some of the big spines that we need across the bypass in one of the areas I'm most familiar with, but other parts of the region where we have large numbers of people, say from Elk Grove to downtown, we may not be able to do light rail, and maybe the bus rapid transit or something like that would be worth considering. So those are my initial thoughts, and I hope that what we're doing is, I appreciate this process, by the way, that we just went through. I think it's a good way to use the virtual platform for engaging people, and I think that's hopefully we'll be using that in the future, but we need to get into the brass tacks. I think in the next few months, I'd be very interested in very specific long-term and short-term strategies that we can actually move forward with.
I agree. I agree with both Mr. Sander and Director Sander and Director Saylor. I think having been through several of these processes too, and even and I also want to emphasize for members of the public who are watching now or who watch the tape that fewer than a quorum of the committee did participate in all of the survey and polling questions, and none of those are items that are coming back before the committee, and so these were not votes being taken by the committee in any way on any items for pending business before the committee that weren't noticed. But I think fundamentally, I think David, your point is really key. That the next generation of mobility isn't a planning question alone, right? And I think our temptation is to say, and even in some of the slides, I think we've described it this like, we want to identify what should the next 10 years result in, and what should that look like? And then what are the steps that we should take in the near term in order to accomplish that? And that makes sense for things that government is in control of, like planning the road network or maybe a route network. But for most of the things on that list of like rank the mobility things that you think matter, they're not. We have a very significant role to play in microtransit and in Uber and Lyft and in micromobility and all that. But we don't run and operate and control it, and we pretend to do so at our folly. And so I think we need to be careful not to think of our role as being like this is another version of an MTP or something where we're making the decisions. Even there we barely make the decisions, but this is not one of those places. It's really how are we designing the decision and governance and metrics and finance systems and whatever as a platform for these things to emerge when the technology is right, when the market's right, when people discover that they think Uber and Lyft is horrible and the next day they can't live without it. When attitudes change that we can't predict. And so I really think that our task in this process is not deciding what the answers are. It's figuring out how are we organizing our culture and our processes and our finance mechanisms and everything else to allow for and to promote the kind of innovation that we say that we want, rather than pick the winners of the innovation on an advanced basis. I think similarly, the Venn diagram approach, I want to raise a flag, or just a yellow flag about, because most of the innovations that we have experienced don't fit that approach, right? This is a conversation we've had in this committee before, but I know we've had it in my own city. It's in some sense the opposite, that we've only been able to innovate when we crossed off the Venn diagram. We're like, no, we are not going to check all the boxes on any one innovation, right? So our VIA project, which is world renowned at this point, we had to make a judgment at the very beginning when the only vans we could get weren't accessible, that we are going to like do an amazing job of serving 70% of the people. And then we got to figure something out. We got to figure out another option for the other 30%. But if we try to make everything serve everyone in a Venn diagram sort of approach, we're going to do what we've already done. It's a crappy job all around, and create a system that nobody wants to run. So I do think finding that, not laying down markers that make it impossible for real innovation to happen, which usually doesn't happen in a comprehensive way, is going to be an important way of designing what that decision environment looks like. So in part, I think it's on us to develop a portfolio of innovations and options and directions that spreads our bets and creates a no regret situation where, as the market changes, as public attitude and technology changes, that we haven't, we didn't do what we did on jump bikes, which say, hey, let's install we're gonna install the racks for jump bikes that are exactly and only exclusively for jump bikes, because we know jump bikes are the future. And then Jump changes their bikes and we're like, what the heck just happened? Right. So it's really more about designing a resilient, adaptive system than it is about deciding what the plans are. So the other thing I would say is just, Autumn, welcome back to the region in this space. That we're not the Bay Area in a key way. And I think the stakeholder conversation is, an important lens on that, is that, and I think committee members know, I bristle when we say, the board and other stakeholders, or the cities and counties and other stakeholders, as though the actual components of SACOGs are simply mere stakeholders in a process with one another. Those are where that's who we work for. And we'll see in a later item what happens sometimes when we go to a stakeholder approach, and how geographically asymmetric that turns out to be. But we have a role here at SACOG. This plan looks like it's going to be operator focused. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but both the technical committee, the way you framed it up at the beginning about how do we make transit systems work well? How do we deliver transit to people? That's a very different question of what are the needs that people have for mobility, and then how are we going to serve them? And is transit, yes or no, is that one of the options or not? Those are both viable approaches. I mean, we have working transit operators in our region, Yola Bus and mine, and RT elsewhere and others. that need to come put this plan together. So it's not a knock on the plan to say that it's operator focused. But if it is operator focused, we should acknowledge that and lean into that approach, and not pretend really that it's a user-centered design approach either in that sense, because it's going to be very difficult to do both. And also understand that when you have an operator-focused approach, that it is less likely that it's going to be really focused on sort of disruptive or systemic innovation. That's not, again, that's not a knock on YOLO bus and RT, but asking incumbent operators to design a system of that's potentially disruptive is important. And we have some very innovative operators in our region, but also let's understand that that's not, that you would have a different conversation, maybe a different set of people around the table if your main focus was around a new generation. So I like the approach, Chris, Chris and Matt and Autumn, the team's doing a great job here. These are, for me, these are sort of guideposts about how we approach this, but I think the fundamental for me is really thinking about how are we designing our own system to be adaptive and resilient, rather than sort of deciding that we're writing the plan with a set of 4 near-term actions that are gonna make it the reality. Vice Chair Soon.
Thank you, Chris. I was thinking about similar along those lines. I think as governments, we set the table for whether it's businesses or in this case, operators, what type of transit technology will be implemented. And I was recalling the list that we talked about with car share, and I'm the one who made that. I don't know if you guys saw, but I made that comment about things like car share and driverless cars. I mean, that's going to change as technology gets better. That I think those preferences might, go up. From the bike example, here in a suburban area like Elk Grove, Autumn, I still am all about bike share. But when they started rolling out with the scooters, in our city that's very flat and things are farther apart, I thought, oh my gosh, yeah, not bikes, scooters. So, I mean, how quick was that to, change from a preference to bikes to scooters? So, I think things will evolve. And so we have to be cognizant of that, just like that Chair Gabalda mentioned. But I want to take a moment in this process that you've laid out. I think it's good also. But there's got to be a balance, because communities like mine are in the midst of just getting I don't even call it robust, but something substantial in terms of transit. Even at the 20th century level, we're just trying to get light rail into town, and so I think the fixed system, one stop type of thing. So my point is, I think while we want to develop this system on a macro level, I think you still have to take the processes that you've laid out and apply them microscopically, like at each community, see where they're at, see where their competitive advantages are, and then incorporate all the different tools that you have, whether it's the more innovative things, or maybe just the basic infrastructure that connects them into this a greater transit system. So it could be a combination of things, and so it's going to be unique. So it's going to be unique for every jurisdiction. So I would emphasize that as you go through this process, recognize there's going to be uniqueness, just whether we're suburban, rural, and urban, that we're going to have different scenarios for each one. And then eventually, I think over time, we will all get on the same page, so to speak. So anyway, that's all. Thank you.
All right, any other comments on item 3?
Chair Gabalda, maybe just the reference check. I appreciate this discussion, and we're really excited to get this initiative launched. About, 2 years ago, the board had a retreat here in the city of Sacramento at the hotel. And I will never forget the sort of the moment in which we had all the white paper on the wall. And one of you said, actually multiple of you said, I really believe in transit. I believe in this concept. I just don't want to invest in yesterday's map and vision. I want to know what's coming. And so at a very high level, that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a sense for the region, a roadmap of where we think things are going without putting our thumb too much on the scale. So we know what this looks like. And frankly, I think part of that is about working with our operators to have them evolve into mobility brokers, right? Rather than just an agency that runs a bus and a train. So that might be a tall order, but this really is a 6-county strategic vision for what that looks like. So we have a better sense of where we're going, what the possibilities are. And it really is, I think, very responsive to much of the direction you've given us over the last couple of years. So we're excited to get it going.
Terrific. All right, then let's proceed to item 4, which is the Sac Region Parks and Trails Strategic Development Plan Outreach update. Statutory.
Yes, good morning. I'm Victoria Cacciatore, and here with an update on the outreach component of the Sacramento Region Parks and Trails Strategic Development Plan. And for a recap of what this project is, we're setting out to identify our region's unifying vision for making trail connections and to identify what is standing in the way of us getting there. In September, I shared an update on what we heard from local partners about the opportunities and challenges to making trail connections and accessing open space. And today I am requesting your input on the list of possible organizations that SACOG would reach out to as part of a revised approach to our public engagement. So a list of organizations that could provide insight into the needs of residents of disadvantaged communities as part of how we're adapting to the pandemic and a lack of public gatherings or lack of sanctioned public gatherings. So we know that trail connections are a way to help us achieve our greenhouse gas reduction goals by increasing safe, active transportation connections and reducing car trips. And it can also be a way that we can support the region's economy, both by reducing brain drain by creating economic opportunities, also by increasing access to jobs or businesses. And that is also a way that we can strengthen our communities and create a sense of place. And both of those are going to help improve both the mental and physical health of our residents. And however, for all of these known benefits, we've also gone over that fewer than half of the residents in our region are near a trail of any length. Fewer than half of the jobs are near a trail of any length. And lower income families are 30% less likely to have a trail near them than higher income families. And that without trails to serve them, residents have no choice but to use on-road networks that may be uncomfortable in a best case scenario for people of different levels of comfort with biking and walking, or in a worst case scenario, unsafe. So to what we had been looking at with our outreach originally was that we were going to go to community events to reach residents in their communities to learn more about what the priority destinations are from the resident perspective, since we've already done a thorough review of the local planning documents that everybody has completed in recent history or less recent history for some of them. And looking for another point of input, especially given that outreach practices have evolved over the last handful of years, and that there are new recognized best practices of how to get a broader range of input aside from just the person who feels very comfortable coming to a city council meeting or a county board of supervisors meeting and making their statement there. So while our plan had been using these best practices of meeting residents in their communities, the pandemic makes that more challenging. Many agencies have found that it is pretty easy to reinforce the connections you already have with engaged residents, such as if you have a very active neighborhood association, it's still quite easy to reach that engaged neighborhood association. But if you're trying to make a new contact with a group of residents, especially in a disinvested community, that is much more challenging. So we've been working with Caltrans on revising the scope for our project to focus more on what is called a grass tops outreach process. So instead of working with grassroots and us starting directly with the resident, working with the groups that work with the residents that we would like to reach, and conducting in-depth interviews with them about what they are hearing from the residents that they work with in these disinvested communities, learn more about what residents are facing, and then also see if there is any information that we can glean where we might be able to still gather input from residents at the beginning of next year as part of a broader outreach process that we're working on that is going to have a much broader regional covering. So I shared the list of the groups in attachment A, both with all of the local agency partners that we've been working with. So all of the city and county staff, community-based organizations that SACOG already has an established relationship with, and so on, to gather their input and to also extend an invitation to any of the city or county staff to participate in any interviews we conduct with groups that provide services in their region. And I would like to invite the committee to provide any input in addition to what I've received from some of the committee members in advance of this meeting. I very much appreciate those emails, which are easy to add into our list because I won't worry about misspelling anything. But where you think the most productive conversations could take place to learn about resident priority destinations and why people feel that those destinations are important. And this will also help us build out this larger list of organizations that we would like to reach out to during the broader engagement effort on priority destinations that would be starting either mid-December or January. So with that, any recommendations, considerations, broader comments?
Let's turn over the, Madam Clerk, do we have public comment on this item as well?
Hi, yes, I've received a public comment from Dan Allison. Dan says, the provided list of CBOs for the Parks and Trails item is conspicuously missing Sacramento area bicycle advocates, which is odd since part of the objective is to reduce VMT. And I have no other attendees who are viewing with any raised hands, so no further public comment.
Great, thank you, Jessica. So let's turn it back to the committee then. Are there questions or comments from members of the committee?
I'd have one, if I may.
Dr. Harris.
Yeah. One thing that I maybe consider up here locally in Yuba City, Sutter County, and in many ways also Marysville is Adventist Health is very active in our community, and I think they could probably provide some positive input as to where the need may arise. They have an active street nursing program, so they can engage with our homeless folks as well, which a fact of a life up here, if we do realize the bike path that we're envisioning, they're going to be using it too. And so we can help it's a lot of times the homeless folks, in my opinion, they're underserved, but they're also some of the most served. It depends on what you're talking about. But I think they can provide some positive feedback as to uses there. Even if you got down some of the basic levels of our bicycle shops, those folks can get some feedback. Part of the grant is getting community buy-in. And so we haven't really started that yet, but that's one of the places I'm going to be starting as well. Just because of their clientele and the nature of their business and the proximity to our proposed trail as well. So, thank you.
Dr. Saylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've provided a few additional CBOs prior to the meeting, but I'm wondering if we want to generally add family resource centers. We have a network of such organizations across Yolo County and I know across the region. So perhaps we can, if we know that there are populations served by those agencies that might not be reached otherwise. So I just add family resource centers as a general category of groups.
Yeah, I mean, this was the item I was forecasting earlier in the meeting, and it's a big. This is a major for me. This is a big warning area. I think that the changes in civic engagement practices are real. The best practices that you've described are an important evolution. They're not evidence-based yet, right? In terms of the objective for government, which is how do we change policies, right? How are our policies more effectively serving needs, aspirations of disadvantaged communities? Those best practices there's not yet any research systematically demonstrating that our changes from public meetings to these different modes are really impacting in that way. They may have different kinds of participation in them, but in terms of changing, being policy relevant or action relevant, the jury is definitely still out. And so some humility about it is in order. Looking at the Yolo County part of this list, what pops up, there's not a single West Sacramento organization on there. There's one headquartered in West Sac, it's the Delta Protection Commission, but they serve like Walnut Grove and Cortland. They're not really a West Sac organization, and it is. I just think there is a necessary humility for evangelical government staff to remember that we actually have a system for this, and it is the cities and counties. And so the City of Sacramento's Office of Neighborhood Services and the individual members of the city council with their district outreach efforts. I mean, this is where most of the action is. Most of our low-income residents don't get their food from the food bank. Most of our low-income residents are not receiving Meals on Wheels. So these are very critical services, and they serve an important part of our community. But if what we're trying to understand is that and get a lens on the broader trails needs of disadvantaged communities, we need to be very clear about what it is, sort of the sample that we're getting in that space. And then also, as I in my city, grass tops. I mean, this grass is like across the causeway, or it's across the river. It's not our grass. So I just want to, for us, raise a big red flag, because we're not great at this, but we do a pretty good job. We do a better job than we're going to get from hearing from Cool Davis or the Poudre Creek Council about what the needs are in West Sacramento. We do a great amount. We do a lot of work in this space, and so does the city of Sacramento. So the notion that we need another point of engagement because the cities and counties don't do this well or well enough, and we could do it better. I think we should check our notions at the door about that. It's not that they're wrong, but we can't presume that either. We can't presume that we could parachute in, talk to a couple of community organizations, and suddenly know more about the needs and the journeys and the pain points and the aspirations of these diverse, disparate, disadvantaged communities in each of our cities, about a specific issue like access to trails, than those communities know themselves. So I think the idea I'm still supportive of, but I couldn't imagine getting anything useful with respect to a lens on West Sacramento trails from this set of organizations. And other than Supervisor Saylor's suggestion, which I think is right on target, I don't really have anything else to add, because we don't organize it. We don't have neighborhood associations. The civic life in the city is not organized that way. So I feel like I'm trying to stick a square peg into the round hole of this item to some extent, to be able to match how my own citizens of all backgrounds engage in this process. James, were you going to?
Yeah, Chair Baldwin, look, I think we always appreciate your take on this, not unlike next generation transit, right? Next generation engagement. And I want to assure you and the rest of the committee members, I do believe the staff has we all have a lot of humility on the staff, that we don't know best, nor do we know your communities as well as you do. So I do want to emphasize that a lot of this is absolutely in partnership with your staff. I will say every community is different. That's an easy thing to say. We can all agree on, right? And so there's a number of communities around the region where I know in some ways they don't have the capacity really in the local government, and said, yeah, actually you should talk to these folks over here. And I'll tell you, this trails plan, one of the reasons I'm so excited about it is because, as you all know, it's tangible, right? It is, people can understand it and touch and feel if you get a little bit of a chance to engage. And so it's a good way to, in some ways, even broaden a little bit of our relationships in partnership with our members, our local government members, with some of the NGO community and a lot of these places where they truly are on the front lines. The other thing I'll just remind everybody is we were overwhelmed by applications for the Youth Leadership Academy. That's a wonderful thing, more than ever. Our staff's been interviewing now. We're turning people away, which is just wonderful. And we also think they're a great resource for this. So believe me, we are looking to get creative. We're not looking to replicate the old things. We are not, but we always appreciate your, this is an iterative process like a lot of things we do. And the pandemic, I think maybe, not unlike a lot of other things, is kind of really requiring us to rethink, in addition to maybe some potential partnerships with some media organizations that have a reach that we don't have.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Dr. Saylor.
Thank you. Maybe others have comments, but on the points that both you and James have just made, I'm presuming, I hope correctly, that the contact with organizations like Yolo County has an advisory commission called Parks, Recreation, Wildlife Advisory Commission that has engaged people from all over the county who are focused on trails in unincorporated areas and connecting those trails across the county. So I'm assuming that those kinds of groups across the region who are attached to the cities and counties, as well as the staff who we have a natural resources staff group who are actively working on trail connections along Cache Creek and Buda Creek. So I'm assuming that those organizations will be included in this work, and that what you're trying to do is identify additional grass tops groups to augment that catchment. Is that accurate assumption?
Yes, that is a accurate assessment of what we've been working towards, because we are working with staff from each agency, and we also asked whether they wanted to, each respective county or city wanted to have one person be the point of contact that then shared the information with all the other impacted interest areas or departments or committees, like you're saying, or whether they wanted multiple people to. And we had different responses throughout all the counties in the region about whether one person wanted to be the point or whether they wanted multiple people to stay plugged into the project.
So let me ask. So just to use our own case again. So we relatively recently just completed a full trails master plan with the most robust civic engagement in all parts of the city in all kinds of different ways, with art and kids and everything. If we were to say, but if you ask our parks staff, like, would you like to do more engagement? Always. That's what park staff always say, right? So it's just saying, well, we'll connect with the jurisdiction, see if they want us to do this or not. They always want to do more, but we just did that process. And we also, it was a lot of demands on residents to say, come to this workshop, participate in this, fill out this form, draw this picture, rank this thing or whatever. So we put a lot of cognitive load on them during that period. So is doing this in each community a necessary part of this project? Or are you going where you're needed, or how are you, what's the, you said, James, and I 100% agree, it's not one size fits all, but is there a, how are you approaching these places that like ours that have already or recently done a process that may be more robust than what you're already anticipating?
I believe that it is more of a go where it's needed. We are also I don't know if I'm trying to find the right word for it, but we don't want to overburden residents with, and what do you think about this? And how about this? You know, to over outreach in certain communities, especially when you're looking at something that is going to be a longer range plan, and to add even further complications onto that, it is not something that SACOG controls the implementation of. It is something that all of the cities and counties within SACOG must take it upon themselves to come together to build these connections. So we have been very cautious with how we are approaching outreach and trying to rely more on the organizations, the institutions, the local agencies that do have that direct accountability to residents, and to really add value where we can, and to not duplicate efforts where it would be not the best use of state grant funding, because as you're saying, some outreach was just completed. I have a comparable situation in Sacramento County, where they've been doing a very extensive outreach process with their active transportation plan. And we are looking to add value and not add effort.
Great. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Victoria. Any other questions or comments on this? All right, appreciate it. Thank you. Let's then go on to our next item, which is the fiscal year, item 5, the fiscal year 2021-22 Caltrans Sustainability Transportation Planning Grants, which is also Victoria.
Yes, I am back. Thank you. I'm sharing an update about the Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grants, which these planning grants provide an important funding source to help our region plan what we need to fulfill the MTP-SES. Caltrans competitively distributes $21.5 million across 3 programs in the state to help advance sustainability, mobility, social equity, and other objectives in support of the Caltrans mission. Caltrans just yesterday closed the period of public comment on the draft guidelines. They're expecting to have 2 public workshops with identical content next week to go over any final changes. They've already shared they don't expect any significant changes from the public document that was released for 30-day comment, I think October 5th. They expect to release final grant guidelines in December, with grant applications due in January, a date to be determined. Cities, counties, and transit operators can apply for sustainable communities grants. And as you can see in the attachment to this item, we did have a rather good performance this last year and brought in a lot of great planning dollars that are going to advance efforts that we need in the region. If cities or counties feel that they have, or transit operators feel that they would have a really good concept for a sustainable partnership grant, it could partner with either SACOG, also El Dorado County Transportation Commission, or Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, if you're located in either El Dorado or Placer County, to apply for those. If you think that your city, county, or transit operator might want to apply to a strategic partnership grant with us, please contact us as soon as possible, because it does take a fair amount of coordination to get those together and submitted. As a note of what we provide as SACOG for technical support, we do grant application review, we provide letters of support, and some data support as well, depending on what the needs are of the project, what you're looking at. And that is all in addition to the technical assistance that Caltrans provides. And to look down the road a little bit, we will come back most likely in December with a list of the potential planning projects that SACOG is considering to submit for this round of planning grants. Such as, I know that there has been, or Caltrans has encouraged us to submit the road use charge strategic partnership grant again. And there are other concepts that are still under discussion. With that, are there any questions?
right, not seeing any, so thanks so much, Victoria. Then we'll go to our final item. Madam Clerk, you're on screen. Does that mean we have received public comment on something?
Just anticipating, no, I have not received any public comment on this item.
Okay, and item 6 is an update on the Rural Main Streets Technical Assistance Program.
Okay, Greg True with the planning staff. So Victoria just mentioned the Caltrans planning grants a couple years ago. SACOG received one specifically to provide technical assistance to rural main streets. So this program has been going on for a little while. We've been providing written reports to the board and then giving more details to the land use committee. Specifically what it is, we got $275,000 to spread out to 11 jurisdictions with some technical assistance to help revitalize their main streets in some way. Something consistent with what's been going on with the Civic Lab program that happened last year, as well as the Commercial Corridors Task Force, the Community Design Program, and more broadly, the Blueprint program. So we contacted jurisdictions when we're writing the grant application if we could provide them some technical assistance that for a relatively small amount of money, roughly about $20,000, in the form of consultants, and that would help them in some way revitalize their main streets. And 11 jurisdictions said yes, we could use some assistance with that. And then we went out and hired 3 consultants, the Local Government Commission, which is a local national nonprofit here in Sacramento. They specialize in streetscape design. Robert Liberty is a planner and does a lot of policy and coordination. And Michelle Reeves with Civilis Consulting, and she does economic development and revitalization. So the projects that we've been helping these 11 jurisdictions with, the first category is Main Street design. Specifically, what can they do in the streetscape to improve? In a lot of cases, these jurisdictions need some ideas. Specifically in Colfax, for their main street, they're asking us to help put a workshop together. During the COVID process, they decided to take some parking spaces and put out some hay bales and allow their restaurants to serve outside dining. It's actually turned out to be very, very popular. And the city is looking to for a way to make this a little bit more of a permanent possibility for outdoor seating. So they're asking us to conduct some workshops and then provide some technical assistance on how to get the design right and show them examples from across the country of how to do that. In Ileton, the community wants to also revitalize its main streets, but it wants to have more ideas to draw from besides them creating it themselves. So we arranged with the University of San Francisco architecture class, 4th year students to design different concepts for the main streets and then work with the community to develop those projects. In Meadow Vista, we're looking, we did a big public workshop. We had over 300 people participate in a survey, online survey for that. And they gave us some ideas about how to make the Placer Hills community more vibrant and yet safer. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a demonstration project, a temporary demonstration project of something, a temporary activity that may work, whether or not it's improved sidewalks or bicycle paths or a roundabout. That's up to them to decide. But we're looking at different possibilities. With COVID, we may not be able to do it. So at minimum, we will provide the plans for how to do it. And then if the grant runs out, then they'll have enough information on how to get that going. In Placerville, their Upper Broadway area has been struggling economically, and they want some more uniform street design, landscaping, and so forth. We've done public workshops on that. In Yuba City on Bridge Street, they have the street that's going connecting to the upgraded bridge. They're looking at different ways to revitalize that, including housing and more limited commercial. And so we've looked at a variety of different operations, including the possibility of a temporary mercado for food. Second category of assistance is in education. So our consultants have been doing some public education workshops In the town of Loomis, their general plan is being updated while they're also doing their housing element. So our consultants are doing public education on what makes a good streetscape, what makes a good variety of housing options for the Taylor Road corridor, and ways that the businesses can survive over the long term. In Orangevale along Greenback Lane, we've done 5 public workshops with our consultants talking about different ways to survive COVID, as well as street design and specific things that they can do to encourage housing development along the corridor. And our final category is what we call COVID and business survival. 4 communities have asked us to help their individual businesses and the business community with strategies that they can do to survive COVID, as well as just revitalization in general. So in Antelope, we're working with the Business Improvement District along Willerga Road to develop some organizational capacity on ways to do strategic planning for that area. In Galt, they have a farmer's market. The marketplace there, it had been declining for the last few years. COVID has made the city take a pause about what it's doing, and it's really the consultants gone in there and helped them kind of revitalize a long-term strategy for that. In Live Oak, we looked, they have a highway improvement program under construction right now. Those businesses are trying to find ways to just make it through. COVID adds kind of a double whammy to that, and we've been working with specific businesses on ways that they can learn more business, as well as just show that they're still working. And finally, in Marysville, very similar thing. We've been working with the business community there. We met weekly for a couple of months. Ultimately came up with some very specific plans to tie into the city's already existing programs that they have. And then also came up with a group is working regularly to implement these ideas. And then they also developed the COVID playbook, which is part of your attachment, and provides strategies, tactics, practices, things that small communities can use to revitalize their community, particularly in these times. But the strategies are both short-term as well as they could be long-term as well. So that's those are the 11 communities that we're serving, and the grant program wraps up here, but we wanted to just make sure the committee was up to speed on what's happening. Be glad to take any questions.
All right, are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? All right, thank you, Mr. Chu. Mr. Corliss, do we have any other matters?
I do have one other matter, which I thought you all needed some good news in this chaotic week. And even though our 19% target was about as close as the Georgia vote count, we did eke that out, and we just got approved by the Air Resources Board at the end of last week. We have an approved sustainable community strategy. That's fantastic news, and I just want to remind all of you that took a ton of work. I see Bruce Griesenbeck on the phone here, his staff, the entire SACOG team, not only for the MTP-SES that was adopted unanimously under Chair Sanders' leadership last year, but the tail on that was was several months, probably more, and a lot of documentation to put behind that. An approved SCS now, I think you all know this because we've talked about it so much, but it means it is literally just-in-time delivery. We are now all good and eligible for our state competitive SB1 grants that we should hear about next week, because we would not be otherwise. And then for many of the projects, local projects across the region, our developers can now use, once again, the streamlining benefits, the CEQA streamlining benefits that only an approved SCS provides. And frankly, we had developers knocking on our door and even a phone call into ARB. Hey, where's the SCS approval? Great work by our team. We had a lot of back and forth with the Air Resources Board. There'll be a longer report that will be published. And depending on the agenda for the November board meeting for all of SACOG, we may give you an update there as well.
Yeah, that's terrific news. Hopefully you will give us an update. I mean, that's good. That's a significant accomplishment across the board. And I know you mentioned otherwise, James, that the ARB approval letter was 70 pages long. So it's gonna be great reading for all of us.
And that's probably honestly what we should actually unpack a little bit, right? Once we get some time to digest it, and we're giving them some comments back. But I think actually that sort of it's the approval is final. So I think understanding what they're saying, because believe it or not, folks, again, maybe like running an election, once the one election's over, you run the next one. Our MTP SES for the next cycle is actually starting again very, very soon. Crazy as that sounds. So I think we need to understand where the analysis of the ARB staff, and that's worth some digging into once I think we've digested a little bit more.
All right, so we're about to start the next one. So you are on brand for the week. You're going to give us some good news and then take it back with some worse news, and then flip back and forth. So, all right, great news. Congratulations. Thanks to the whole staff team, and I know several board members were engaged too. Just really, really fantastic work in order to get that done. And as James said, some major benefits for both transportation and for a lot of the key projects in many of our cities, and the counties. So thanks so much. And our only other item was item 7, which was receive and file. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Slowey moves.
Second.
Any seconds that the meeting be adjourned. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, and then we'll close out the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Director Harris? Absent. Director Joyner? Absent. Director Peters?
I think you just have to stay meeting the rest of the day, or you've lost your quorum.
Yeah,
Yes,
this usually happens when we get to receive and file. We lose our quorum, so I may have to just hereby declare that the meeting is adjourned.
Works.
So let's do that. So I hereby declare this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Hang in there, everybody. And hang in there.
Thanks, Christopher. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.